A, they're both lying. B, it doesn't change anything in terms of a strategic picture. C, it shows that Hezbollah carries a pretty robust capability to hit back at Israel. And so Israel, with all of its claim bombing, some are real, some are not, inside Lebanon and inside Syria, is not weakening and not destroying Hezbollah. Hezbollah is not going away, just like Hamas is not going away. This is, really Israel's painted itself into a corner and is in self-denial, at least among the ruling elite right now. The Netanyahus, the Ben Gavirs, the Bezalel Smotrich, they've got their own version of reality, or what they believe is reality. It's really a delusional nightmare. Then you have others, such as the head of Mossad, the head of Shin Bet, some retired senior Israeli military personnel, the head of the spokesman for the Israeli military, all speaking out saying, hey, we can't beat Hamas, and the approach, the strategy currently being implemented by Netanyahu is going to destroy us as a country. One retired, pretty well respected old guy, older than me, so he's officially an old guy. His name, General Itzhak Bakir, and he said, look, this could be the end of Israel within a year.
Larry, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, you froze up there for a second.
Larry, we have some issues here. Yeah, you're back.
Yeah. I'm seeing me. I was watching your image. You were freezing up. I don't know. They're playing with us.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but
you said his name is
Itzhak Bakir, and Bakir, and he was company commander in the Yom Kippur War. Retired he's now listed as a reserve Israeli Defense Force general. But he said, "Hey, within a year, Israel could cease to exist," and he wasn't just being hyperbolic. He was serious. So you got a real split. This sort of the baby boom generation, those who were, let's call it, those who were in their 30s back in the 1970s. So 50 years ago, in their late 20s, early 30s in 1970, during that time when Israel really came into its own with the victory in the Six-Day War, or the Yom Kippur War, that they're looking at this now and recognizing that the current leadership in Israel, the ones that are exerting the most political control, are these, I don't want to call them the ultra-right extremists, because I'm not even sure that means anything. They're not ultra-religious in the same sense that the Hasidic community is. The Lubavitchers, who, believe that Israel as a state shouldn't exist because it violates the prophets. It's not in harmony with the Torah. We got this other group that believes that they're on a mission from God. But unlike the Blues Brothers, in that movie, they were on their own mission from God. These guys are on a mission from God to blow up and start a massive world war. We can't discount that. We can't pretend that the religious element of this, or these so-called religious beliefs, these beliefs that there is a divine plan by the hand of God unfolding, and that requires that there be this battle of Armageddon in Israel, and that all the forces of Satan are wiped out, whoever that is, because you've talked to these Israeli crazies, the Gentiles, the Arabs, the Muslims are the Satanists. Talk to the Muslims, the Jews are the Satanists. Talk to some Christians, the Jews and Muslims are Satanists. So the problem is with all these, religious interpretations of this, people, they get off the deep end, but they they act on what they believe, and I think that's dangerous.
Yeah. Did this attack, Hezbollah used missiles and drones, if I'm not mistaken?
So they use the drones. It's like bait. It runs out there. The Israelis fire their Iron Dome at it. Hezbollah is able to see where the Iron Dome is, and then they can fire the missiles somewhere else. Hassan Nasrallah, the chief of Hezbollah, as he said in a lengthy speech yesterday, that, hey, we didn't even use our precision and strategic missiles. So Hezbollah has ballistic missiles that have, you described them as strategic and precision, which tells me they're big. They can go a long ways. They can go way deep down to the south in Israel. They didn't use those, but Hezbollah claims they hit this base, Gilat, Gillot, which is just outside of Tel Aviv. But basically,
which is in the center part of Israel.
Right. Well, center and closer to the coast, but it's, but this base houses the Unit 8200, which is Israel's version of the National Security Agency, which intercepts. It's a communications intercept agency. They're focused on collecting all sorts of communications from their enemies, text messages, phone messages, etc. So Hezbollah claims they hit that. Israel said, no, they didn't. So we don't know who's telling the truth. I think it's likely that Hezbollah did hit it. What kind of damage it did, well, we don't know. But it's not clear that Israel shot down every inbound Hezbollah rocket and drone. And in any event, if they did, you got to think that the rule of thumb is that you fire 2 Iron Dome missiles at every inbound target. Well, if Hezbollah fired 300, that's 600 counter battery missiles by the Israelis. I don't think, when Lockheed Martin is only producing like 505 or 550 of those kinds of missiles a year. So Israel theoretically could have used up in one day what Lockheed Martin produces in a year. And I'm not sure that Israel has its own capability to produce the missiles for the Iron Dome. But even if they do, they don't not put them out at the rate that they could replace 600 that they fired yesterday. Candidly, if I was running the Hezbollah military campaign, I'd be bombarding the Israelis with 100 missiles a day, just to exhaust them, or with drones, just to exhaust their supply of missiles, and then have Iran hit them with a ballistic missile. They wouldn't have anything to defend themselves with, or the Houthis.
I've read an article in the New York Times. It says on the part of the United States, people who know what's going on in that region, they're talking about, as they've been reporting to the New York Times, they're saying that none of those drones that were supposed to hit the central part of Israel were successful in their mission. And I don't know. On the other hand, as you mentioned, Nasrallah was talking about, we could hit all the targets that we wanted to hit.
Yeah. I mean, so what? Unless Israel was privy to Hezbollah's plans, again, none of the drones hit and caused an explosion and caused damage. Was that their purpose? Or was their purpose to identify where the air defense systems are located and to give them a target that would require them to start depleting their rounds? Think of it, if you've got, a conventional firearm and you have a magazine, where all the cartridges are loaded into it, you got 16. Well, if you fire 8, you only got 8 left, unless you got a resupply to go to. And what I'm saying is, it's not clear that Israel has a deep resupply capability. And so the more as they fire more and more of these missiles, you may, their defense missiles, they may run out. Then all of a sudden, the defenses are down. You run in. The defenses are always set up in layers, and what you want to do is get the outer layer and the inner layers, bring them down so that then you can attack.
Again, we are hearing from Washington that within 72 hours, Iran gonna attack Israel, and on the other hand, Iranians are talking about that they're gonna attack Israel. We cannot avoid that. How do you see? Do you think, because it's been more than 10 days that they're talking about within 72 hours they're gonna attack?
Oh, it's more like 2 weeks, going on 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Iran's going to do it when Iran's ready to do it. I don't know what's so difficult about people. This is not a television game show where, Nima, you only have 30 seconds to answer. Please, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Oh, sorry, time's up. Iran's on no clock. I think we talked one of the last times we conversed. I reminded everyone of what happened in 1988. July 88, Iranian airliner gets shot down. Then it's December of 88, the Panam 103 gets blown up in the sky. And while the Libyan agents were convicted of that, I think there's strong circumstantial evidence. And I know my friend Bob Baer, not Barr, Barr is a congressman, but Bob Baer, who was working the issue then as an intelligence officer for the CIA, strongly believes Iran was behind that. So, Iran waited 6 months to get revenge. There's no rush. And they've got, Russia's been supplying them with defense weapons, the air defense systems, and training their crews, and they're allowing Russian crews to work with. Plus, I think, the Iranians keep looking at this in a broader regional context. Whether, I could make a case that maybe they coordinated this strike on Sunday with Hezbollah. Say, okay, you run this attack. We're going to have our satellites, our overhead imagery, or we'll ask the Russians or Chinese to provide it, so we can see exactly where the Israeli systems are located, so that they can pinpoint the location. Then they could actually do pinpointed strikes on those air defense systems and take those out, and then maybe hit that base Galat and destroy 8,200. I could see Iran doing something like that. Iran's not going to launch a massive strike like it did on April 13th, which is, I can't believe we're all 3 months, past that, or for 4 months past that. So
we've learned, Larry, that Palestine wants to be part of BRICS. If you remember, we talked about it before. And do you think that if they accept Palestine being part of this organization, that would help their position?
No. Does it help their position with the Israelis?
Yeah. Just
Israel wants the Palestinians dead. Israel, the current government, let me put it as the Zionists, the ardent Zionists, are not at all interested in any kind of peaceful coexistence with Palestinians. They view Palestinians as subhuman. They're not real people. The Germans had a term for it, like when they called Jews Untermensch. So the subhuman, once you designate people as they're not the same as you. They don't think like you. They don't have emotions like you. They're animals. They must be killed. They must be sacrificed, if you will. So the joining BRICS, it's symbolic for the Palestinians anyway. I mean, they don't bring anything to the table from the standpoint of trade. They don't produce any great wealth, minerals, resources of any kind. They are largely a consumer entity. but it's a gesture to say, hey, you may be the smallest one in the group, but you're part of our group. That's what the United States and Europe needs to wake up to. This BRICS is growing, and it's a real thing now. It's not a figment of someone's imagination. It's not a fantasy corporation.
But politically, they can put some sort of pressure on the United States in order to put pressure on the Netanyahu administration, on Israel, to go after two-state solution. Don't you think?
No, not really. No, I mean the Israeli money that's bought Congress and bought the White House is too strong. So the only thing that's going to ultimately change that is that there's a change in American political opinion, and there's signs emerging now that people under the age of 40 are not buying into the whole Israeli Exodus story that God gave this land to them and they're entitled to it, and the Palestinians are a bunch of evil bastards that have to be run out.
Yeah. We've learned that Qatari Prime Minister is visiting Tehran in Iran, that they're talking with the Iranians. Do you think it's part of the negotiations between Iran and the United States? Does he have any sort of message for Iranians, or it's something between Qatar and Iran?
Can I say yes, all of the above? Yeah, no, I think it's all of the above. I think the Qataris are a natural one to use to talk to Iran on behalf of the White House. But the White House doesn't have anything to say to Iran that Iran wants to hear, I don't think. The one, look, Biden is a lame duck. His ability to put in place any kind of policy and permanent change is non-existent. I believe the odds are very strong that Donald Trump will be reelected as president. And then with respect to Israel, you're going to see, in some respects, a harder line by the United States in support of Israel. So you're not going to see a weakness there. The Qataris also, I think, from their own benefit, are trying to keep Iran in check, hoping that it will not overreact. And one of the reasons it does that is it's hosts the largest U.S. Air base in the Middle East, I believe, Al Udeid. You've got a combination of U.S. Regular U.S. Air Force, U.S. Army personnel, U.S. Marines, as well as U.S. Special Operations Forces. It's a big base. I knew it back in 2000. Good Lord, 18 years ago. I was at Al Udeid flying. I flew into there. Well, I flew into Qatar, their international airport, then drove out, transferred to Al Udeid in a van, and then from Al Udeid I flew into Iraq in May of 2006. So it was a transportation hub for moving people in and out of Iraq. Now it's a hub also moving people in and out of Syria, perhaps, and other places, and as well as still into Iraq. So you're going up into. It's not the only route, but it's one route.
Yeah. Nasrallah was talking about, in his speech, he was talking about they were waiting for the negotiations between the United States and Israelis together with Palestinians, Qataris all together to see if there is any sort of outcome for these negotiations. That's why it took too much time to attack Israel. Do you think it seems that Iran has the same kind of strategy. Don't you think that they're still waiting to get some sort of agreement between Israelis and Palestinians?
I doubt it, because there's not going to be an agreement. I mean, everybody just, let's wake up and let's recognize what the meaning of the last 40 years, 50 years, where there have been all these different, quote, peace processes underway. I think some of us have been in denial. The reality is this. When Hamas emerged was 1987, it was shortly after that Israel decided, through its intelligence organizations, Shin Bet, Mossad, to start providing financial support and God knows what else to Hamas. Why? Because they wanted Hamas to be a thorn in the side of the PLO and Fatah. They wanted Hamas to be a faction that would not accept the kind of peace agreement that Israel was negotiating with Fatah and PLO, because Israel didn't want a peace agreement. They don't want it. They're not interested in living side by side in peace with Palestinians. And I'm talking about this Zionist crew. The Zionists are the ones who believe God gave this land to us 3,000 years ago. We own it from the river to the sea, from the Euphrates River to the sea. And anybody that's there that's not one of us, not part of the tribe, get out. That's what they believe. So there's no interest in negotiating with the Palestinians to say, oh, okay, yeah, you can set up your state in Gaza and the East and the West Bank, and we'll leave you alone as long as you leave us alone. It's not going to happen. So, I just encourage people to stop dealing in fantasy. This is only going to end in at least one of two ways. Israel will succeed in slaughtering the Palestinians and forcing them all into exile, and will take the land by force. I don't think it can do that. I think it's going to run into too many problems, but they're sure as hell trying to carry that off. That the Palestinians will, with the help of Hezbollah and Iran and Syria and other countries, will actually defeat and weaken Israel. Israel will collapse from within, and the Palestinians will then figure out a way to establish control over land that was previously denied to them. That would be a nightmare scenario for the people in the West. The third alternative is the United States, Russia, and China get together, put all their differences aside, agree to work as one, and come in and tell all the sides, stop, separate right now. This is going to stop now. Everyone cuts off weapons flows. You put real UN troops, real US troops, Chinese troops, Russian troops, separating the sides, and then force separation, enforce an agreement. Go back to the original boundaries set up by the United Nations. Now, I doubt that's going to happen, but that'd be one way to bring an end to it. But it's going to have to be done by force, and it'll have to be done by cutting off Israel completely. So they're a dependent country, and the United States did it before, back in when the Brits and French and the Israelis decided to invade Egypt. Was it 1954? And Eisenhower said, "No, wait a minute, stop, get out now, back in your corner." Yeah, a little paternalistic, but that the Israelis got back in their corner because they were dependent upon the United States. They still are dependent upon the United States. The difference is, so you're a parent with two kids. You better not ever become that parent that allows the kids to run their life and tell them what to do. Particularly nothing more obnoxious than like a 3-year-old that's constantly screaming, throwing a temper tantrum, doing what they want, telling the parent, no. That's Israel. I mean, and when you let them get to a certain age, what you may have thought was cute when they were 2 or 3, when they're 16 or 17 acting that way, it's no longer cute. They're assholes. And you got to stop them. But, for some parents, they've allowed the kids to, just get out of control. And when they get to be that age, parents no longer have control. That's the United States is close to that with Israel. We got the money, we can control it, but Israel's also got a counter bet with its money through AIPAC and other Israeli American Jewish organizations that are avid supporters of Israel. So, that's just I think the bloodshed and fighting is going to continue. I don't see peace on the horizon.
The problem is that we don't have Eisenhower in the United States, and we're not going to get it in the future.
Yeah.
And that's why we're not going to get any sort of compromise and cooperation with Russia and China. These are huge, important issues that we are witnessing right now.
Well, yeah. Look, the world has changed dramatically in the last 2.5 years. 2.5 years ago, before the start of the special military operation in Ukraine, you could make the case that the United States was the dominant power in the world. That nobody would question our military capabilities. We felt that we were in control diplomatically, that more countries would back us than would back Russia or China. And then starts the SMO, the special military operation. We impose sanctions. And as a result of the imposition of those sanctions, it accelerates Russia's move towards the independent developing BRICS and making sure BRICS was an independent financial system. And at the same time, then the United States stupidly starts tweaking the Chinese. Nancy Pelosi sending delegations to Taiwan, and they're basically going to the China. Hey, China! Hey, laughing and insulting the Chinese. So the Chinese and Russians go, "Do you see what they're doing to me? Yeah, do you see what they're doing to me? Hey, let's get together." It's a Bob Marley song. Let's get together. But it's not the Bob Marley that the United States wanted, because U.S. policy had since 1972 been predicated upon trying to develop relationships between the United States and China, so as to keep China out of, we don't want them in bed with the Russians. Well, hello, we not only are they in bed together, man, they got married. They're going to have kids. So, this is beyond just a one night stand, and so out of this now, once as they start accelerating this movement of building up BRICS and the closer relationship between Russia and China, what happens? Well, the U.S. influence in Sudan goes down the crapper. The U.S. had been fighting a proxy war in Yemen, using the Saudis to go after the Houthis, and we were using Sudan, I think, as a base for part of that. That goes away because the Chinese and Russians go in and get a negotiated deal with, all of a sudden, Iran and Saudi Arabia are agreeing to be friends again. War is still there in the background, but they're not as engaged with fighting each other. The countries start lining up, wanting to be members of BRICS. Not only Iran and the Palestinians, as we talked about, but Turkey. Here's Turkey been banging on the door. It's like some street urchin at a window, tapping on the window, trying to, can I get in? It's cold and snowy outside, and I don't have enough. Can I get in? And the Europeans have been going, no, go away, you nasty Turks. Ugh. You Muslims. So here's Turkey for 24 years, getting the old stiff arm. Now all of a sudden BRICS is saying, Turkey, can we be part of BRICS? Sure. They'll get a formal invitation, and Turkey actually has something to bring to the table. So now all of a sudden you got this emerging movement, and all this comes against the backdrop that countries like the Saudis, the Jordanians, the Turks, the Egyptians, they used to be sort of in the U.S. camp backing Israel against those nasty Hamas creatures. That's turned, and they're not. There's no going back on that now. The images that are coming out of Gaza are just too damn horrible to I mean, it just is shocking. I saved a couple on my Telegram stack the other day. One was a child that was just burnt to a crisp. I mean, burnt black. And we're not talking like a beautiful black baby born from a black mother. I mean, we're talking about black, charred. Pictures of children, 2 years old, missing quarter to a half of their head, being carried by their father or their grandfather. And the Israelis are calling them terrorists. Israel has conceded, at least the generals have conceded, they can't beat Hamas. And what has taken place in Gaza is that Hamas, despite being bombed now for 10 months, 11 months, is growing stronger. They are recruiting more members. People in the past who didn't necessarily want to be affiliated with Hamas are joining up. Why? Because Hamas will fight for them. Nobody else will except the Houthis. Your choice is join Hamas or go to Yemen and join the Houthis. Nobody else is fighting for them yet. And so against this backdrop that Israel's becoming more isolated, not stronger, and it's becoming weaker internally because you got these big divisions between, as we discussed earlier, with Mossad, Shin Bet, the IDF on one side, and the crazed religionists who want to start the Armageddon war running the government. All of that, they're fighting internally while they face real threats from without. I mean, Israel, and think of this, neither Israel nor the United States has been able to defeat the Houthis. The port of Eilat is shut down. It's declaring bankruptcy. It's laid off workers. People can't go to work anymore. And there's no goods coming in there because the Houthis, a bunch of, sandal wearing, curved dagger wearing, old guy, so-called 14th century people have defeated the U.S. Navy, forced the U.S. aircraft carrier out of the Red Sea. And all of the airstrikes that the United States has carried out and tried to, look, we dropped some bombs on some sand. We made some glass in the desert. Yeah, but you didn't destroy any of the missiles because they're mobile launchers and they keep moving them around. The Houthis remind me of that guy, on the street that's running the scam. He's got the 3 cups, puts the bean down and says, "Hey, America, find the missile. Move it around, America." "Oh, there. No," And every time you try to find that missile, the United States is paying, like $1 million, $2 million. It's not like a dollar a try, boy, because you're firing expensive missiles and bombs in it. So the Houthis are, I think the rest of the Middle East is there going, man, who knew? Who thought the Houthis could do that? But they did. So, this is a long way of just saying that here we sit with the United States. There's nobody in charge at the White House. The political campaign's underway. So you basically got chaos in Washington. The United States has now deployed half its Navy, it looks like, to the Middle East. And they're sitting around waiting. It's going to happen now any day. Like I said, it's in 72 hours. No, 48 hours. Well, that's what you guys said 2 weeks ago. That's what you said 3 weeks ago. So who knows when it's going to happen, but we're ready. We're ready. And every day you're out there waiting costs money. And every day you're out there trying to stay alert, trying to remain ready to go, it's time passes. And I don't know, okay, so you're the father of a relatively young child. And you remember after the baby, I do remember after the baby was born. Remember how you had to stay up at night and didn't get a lot of sleep? Now, No, so it's like after you've been sleep deprived for 2 days and it's at night, I say, okay, Nima, I want you to sit here with this gun and guard this door. Stay awake. I guarantee you in like 45 minutes, you're going to be going, heads down, snoring. That happens to the U.S. Navy in this situation. So in a way, Iran can keep putting the word out. Yeah, we're going to do it tomorrow. Just watch us. We're going to hit you. Okay, get ready, guys. Here they come. And they never come. Oh, no, tomorrow. Did I say tomorrow? I meant the day after tomorrow. We're coming. And so keep the United States in this constant state of readiness. And all of a sudden, you exhaust them. It's one way to inflict attrition, actually. So it's an amazing time we're living in, and nobody really knows what the hell's going on. That's the bottom line.
Larry, I think it's so important when it comes to BRICS. If Palestine being part of BRICS and Azerbaijan being part of BRICS, and we know how important Azerbaijan is for Israel, and
Whoops, you disappeared. Nima, come back. Well, while Nima is gone and recovering, I'll try to keep the live stream going. Nima's raising a great point about the relationship of Azerbaijan and Israel in the past. But what's going on now is Azerbaijan is solidifying its relationship with Russia. It is seeking entrance into BRICS. And, this is not just one country going into BRICS. I kept talking while you were gone.
can you hear me right now?
Yeah, I hear you now. So we're back on the live feed. I was trying to follow up your explanation, what you were asking about Azerbaijan.
Yeah, my question is this: if Azerbaijan being part of BRICS and Palestine being part of BRICS, and the United States not capable of putting pressure on Azerbaijan and Turkey the way that they did before, because being part of BRICS has some sort of arrangement between Azerbaijan and BRICS, and they can put pressure on Azerbaijan. They can replace the way that they can sell their energy, their oil to other countries. That's why I think the future would be different for Palestine.
Well, Palestine would have an alternative source. What you're talking, the key is that the Palestinians need to have an alternative source of fuel. But to do that, they have to have control of a port. Now, right now, even in Gaza, they don't have control of the port. The Israelis control that. So the part of an agreement or part of a settlement is that the Palestinians are going to have to be guaranteed a port that they control in Gaza, and that Israel cannot interfere with it. And maybe as part of that guarantee, you could see Russia and Chinese Navy deployed along with the Turks to just keep the Israelis at bay. That would certainly be a game changer. The one thing a lot of people haven't paid attention to with respect to land smuggling, I call it, through the crossing between Egypt and to Gaza. I guarantee you that there were large underground tunnels that were used to smuggle everything. It's not just one thing, everything you can imagine. There were members of the Israeli, let's call them elite, some intelligence service, some government, that absolutely knew about that and profited from it. They got money from it. That's why it was allowed to go on for so many years. So, now all of a sudden they pretend that they're surprised. Oh my God, look, Hamas has tunnels. So,
yeah. Larry, shifting the gear to the conflict in Ukraine, if you remember those preconditions of Putin, one of the most important one was the withdrawing all the Ukrainian troops from Donbass region.
yeah.
It seems that this offensive on Kursk region is helping to achieve that idea that
yeah.
they're helping
No, I
Russia
mean,
the way that Russia didn't expect it.
no, Russia said, "Hey, this is what you need to do. You want a peace agreement?" And they said, "Nope." It's okay. We'll do it for you. Get out. And I mean, people. I was listening to Alexander Mikuros earlier today, expressing just amazement at how quickly, and not just his amazement, but amazement being voiced by Ukrainian telegram channels, that how quickly now the Russians are moving, and they're taking some villages and towns intact. When they did like Avdiivka and Bakhmut, oh my God, there was a moonscape. Nothing was left standing. Now, entire towns are left standing. It's sort of like the difference between what happened to Warsaw at the end of World War II, when it was finally retaken by the Soviets after the Germans had destroyed it, compared to Krakow. Krakow, which is south of Warsaw, was virtually intact. Even the Jewish ghetto that was there and the original Jewish section of the town survived. One of the few in Europe. So that's what you're starting to see in the Donbass. The Russians are moving very, very rapidly. And then last night into early today, they launched a massive missile strike, combination cruise missile, ballistic missiles, throughout Ukraine, destroying power centers, reportedly destroying some hangars where there were F-16s stored. Those F-16s are now a smoking pile of rubble. In fact, there was one video circulating showed Volodymyr Zelensky starting, "Hello, I'm Volodymyr Zelensky, and tonight I want to talk to you about," went blank, the power cut out. So he's like, "Oh, nice message." So, Russia's getting ready for something bigger. This missile strike comes on the heels of Putin meeting Saturday night with a group of generals from some of the most elite services. Russians get ready to do something, and to do it in a big way, and it's going to hurt NATO as well. They're not letting NATO off the hook for what had happened in Kursk, for the killing of civilians. And, it'd be one thing if the Ukrainians were actually attacking military targets with their drones in Russia, but they're not. They're hitting just civilian targets just to cause fear among the population and try to thinking that they can cause enough damage, to civilians that will weaken support for Putin. It's not going to happen. And all it's going to do is ensure the destruction of Ukraine as a political entity. We've seen Russia now go through evolutions. Originally, the Russians were willing to let Ukraine continue to exist as a nation, just as long as it promised not to be part of NATO. That's all it asked. And it would treat the people in the Donbass fairly. That they could keep the Donbass, but just treat the people fairly. Well, that was March of 22. That went down the toilet, flushed away by Joe Biden and Boris Johnson. So then the next proposal out of Russia is, okay, pull all your forces, stop shooting at us now, stop. Pull all your forces out of Kherson, Donetsk, Luhansk, and Zaporizhia. Then we'll talk. We'll figure out an agreement. Will we let you continue to exist as a nation or not? Will you have access to the Black Sea? Lots of things to talk about. Then the Ukrainians said, "Niet, no, we're not going to do that." Okay. Now Russia said, next step, you invade our country, you invade us with German tanks and people wearing German helmets, carrying German swastikas and images that remind us of what you did to us 80 years ago. And you think we're going to go, no harm, no foul? you're out of your damn minds. You're going to pay a price. Not only you, Ukraine, but NATO, you, the United States, you're going to pay a price. You can't do that to us. We're not going to let that happen. It happened to us 80 years ago. We thought we put it into it. We're going to put it into it now. That's the mentality. People in the West better wake up to that.
Larry, when you read some of these news from the Western mainstream media, one of them is Julian Robke in Germany,
Yeah.
and he's so famous in Germany, and he's talking about that Russia is running out of missiles. Are we living on the same planet, in your opinion? What are the sources? How he's talking this way, in your opinion?
I'd like to know, what drugs is he using? You know, is Volodymyr Zelensky sending him a daily hit of cocaine? Yeah, try the cocaine. It's laced with mushroom. Very good. You know, running out of missiles, huh? So the Russians, we can go back and look at the articles, including Ropka's articles, starting in April of 2022. So we're now almost 2.5 years ago. Any day now, the Russians are going to run out of missiles. The Russians are running out of missiles. They said it in April 22, May 22, June 22, July 22, August 22, September 22, and now we're saying it in August of 24. It's just, you want to grab him and say, shut up. Stop making a fool of yourself. You know, this, you keep telling us that the wolf is coming, and the wolf never shows up. You're the boy that cries wolf. And in this case, Russia is building more missiles every day. And as they just demonstrated in the last 24 hours, they missiled the hell out of Ukraine across the board. And Ukraine couldn't stop it. That's the other key factor.
Larry, just to wrap up this session, I think when this conflict in Ukraine is over, we can say this is one of the hugest loss of NATO operation, any sort of NATO operation, since they have started these endless wars with all of these countries, because you have a 700,000 Ukrainian soldiers, first class NATO trained and equipped by NATO, and you have destroyed all of them, destroyed a country right now. And the only thing that Ukraine is capable of doing right now, just attacking civilians, just hitting some areas, this offensive on civilians in the Kursk region. And nobody understands what they're going to achieve, why they're continuing this conflict.
They're not strategic thinkers, clearly. And, you know, this war marks the first major defeat of NATO. And the Russians have demonstrated that all NATO equipment can be easily defeated. HIMARS, Storm Shadows, Martyrs, Bradleys, M1 tanks, Javelins, run down the list, F-16s. You have not had a single U.S. NATO supplied weapon system that has stymied the Russians, stopped them. The use of drones, again, the drones could have been a game changer for Ukraine if they'd been A, produced in enough numbers, and B, Russia didn't have effective electronic warfare capabilities. But it did. That's not the case. Russia has outproduced Ukrainian drones. Plus, it's had the assistance of Iran, who has very robust capability with drones. And, if anything, when this war is done, the lessons drawn from it will be any future conflict will be a war of drones and a war of electronic warfare. That conventional weapon systems that prevailed and predominated in World War II, like the tank, the combat aircraft, the fighter, and the naval task force, the carriers, they're no longer really relevant in the 21st century. Technology has changed their role. It's like with aircraft carriers as an example. Aircraft carriers completely useless when it comes to Russia. If it gets closer, it's going to get blown out of the water. But even now, down off the coast of Iran, or those aircraft carriers are very vulnerable to hypersonic missiles. So we spend, the United States spends $15 billion out of an $800 billion defense budget. We're talking about 2% of its defense budget being spent on a big, expensive piece of junk that's not going to be any use to you in a war. So that's one of the lessons that comes out of this, and that you don't attack Russia. Don't. The movie in the movie Princess Bride, there's that funny scene with William Shawn where he's talking about the two greatest truths. Don't start a land war in Asia. Okay, so add to that, hey, I guess if Asia includes Russia, then don't start a war in Asia. Don't invade Russia. Don't do it. Too big, and they have a tendency to get really pissed off if you do it. And they're not very forgiving when you do it.